Even in a worst-case scenario, you can add sound treatment to the room that you're in. I'm going to demonstrate it step by step on this episode of Podcastification. My name is Kerry Green, and I am the Client Happiness Guy at PodcastFastTrack.com, and this is Podcastification. Podcastification is all about you, teaching you how to podcast, how to put into practice the best practices that I and my team have learned in working with hundreds of clients. You are going to podcast better from listening to this show. If you like what you hear on Podcastification, please just hit the pause button, swipe to the sharing function on your app, and share this episode with somebody you know will benefit. And if you'd like to get in on more Podcastification goodness, you can do it by subscribing to our Podcast Optimizer email series, and I promise you won't get lots of junk. You'll just get one actionable email a week. Go to podcastfasttrack.com/optimizer. That is enough of that kind of stuff. Let's get you podcastificated right away. You know, I don't think I've mentioned it on Podcastification yet, but my family has just had a tremendous change in our life situation. My wife and I decided we were going to sell our home, which we did with a little bit of profit from it. And from that profit and a little bit of effort, we were able to purchase a Class A RV. So one of those great big rigs, and it's our only home now. So we're traveling around the country. But prior to actually having the RV, we are just traveling from Airbnb to Airbnb and that sort of thing, just waiting until our RV is ready for us. And in those scenarios, I'm finding myself having a very difficult time actually doing podcast recordings because the rooms that I'm in are not always the best quality of a room to record in. You know, they've got room echo, they've got outside noise issues that I'm not used to. You know, I've not had the opportunity to set up my own studio the way that I want it, which I will be doing in the RV. And I will be recording an episode in the future about setting up a podcast studio step by step as I do that in my RV. But back to the topic of today. I'm having to get a little creative in setting up a better sound recording environment, adding sound treatment to the environments that I'm in. In this episode, I'm going to demonstrate for you step by step everything from the room sound I begin with to every step along the way I'm doing to improve the sound quality of my episode. And what I'm endeavoring to show you here is, number one, that the condition of your room is the most important thing when it comes to recording. You want to make sure you've got an environment where your recording can be protected from outside noises and the optimal environment as far as you can make it. That is going to be a tremendous asset to any recording that you do. I'm also wanting to demonstrate that there are very practical things you can do that do not cost a bit of money. I have not spent any money in what you're about to hear on this episode. And in fact, this recording you're listening to right now is coming from my final result of no money down sound treatment for a room. So let's get into it. I'm going to demonstrate the first step in my process by showing you what the original room sound was like. Okay, this is recording in the room with no treatment of any kind whatsoever. I'm using my Audio-Technica 2005 microphone. I do not have the windscreen on it. As you can probably hear, there's a lot of room noise, meaning sounding kind of echoey, kind of big in the sound of the recording. You may also be able to hear the waves outside the door. We're recording this right on the ocean front, which I thought was an ideal place to show you the dramatic changes you can make in a recording. We've also got my phone ringer is not turned off. It just went off on me. The windows are open. It's a tile floor. It's a hard surface on the table. There's all kinds of things here that can be addressed. And I'm just going to go through them step by step in this episode and address them one at a time and let you hear the difference as we go. So that is it for this first section with the actual room noise we're dealing with from the beginning. I'll move on to the next step. All right, this is the second recording, and all I've done in this one is close the windows and close the doors so that all the ambient sounds from outside are gone, including the waves, that kind of stuff. I'm not sure you'll notice a whole lot of difference, but typically you would hear a lot less hiss in the background, a lot less just kind of background clutter noise. So we're moving ahead. Next step, we're going to put on the wind filter that goes right on the microphone itself. Well, as I mentioned previously, my family is traveling now. We're moving all over the country. And one thing I'm really looking forward to is the opportunity to meet some of my clients face to face. I want to go to the places they live. I want to have some coffee, have a beer, do whatever, and get to know them on a more personal level. And since I'm traveling, I also wanted to make this offer available. I'm now available to come to your location, perhaps, and do a training for you. It doesn't have to be a big deal training. It could be personal one-on-one training. It could be for a Chamber of Commerce meeting or a club meeting. Or if you've got a local podcasters meetup, I'd love to come and give you some tips and best practices on the ways that you can improve. My rates are reasonable and my time is flexible, so give me a shout. Carrie at podcastfasttrack.com. All right, this track is recorded just with the microphone, same room conditions as before, only now I've added the foam pop cover or windscreen onto the microphone. Now, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this, but I want to record plenty of track here so that you can hear the difference, if there is any difference. In my experience, these kinds of wind filters that go directly on the mic are just as good and sometimes better than the pop screen that you see that's placed in front of microphones, between your mouth and the microphone at certain times. It kind of depends on your application. But this is my next step. You see, you can do small things a little bit at a time to improve the quality of your sound, no matter what room you're in, no matter how bad the sound may be. All right, now we're going to move on. What I'm going to do is put a blanket on the table surface in addition to the windscreen on the microphone, and we'll see how that helps. All right, now I've got the blanket over the table surface. That's the only thing I've done. I've got the blanket spread across the entire table. You can see a picture of this in the show notes for this episode at podcastfasttrack.com/120, or you can see it in the description of your show notes. There will be a link there so that you can go directly to the show notes and see this image. But my microphone is placed partially over the blanket as it's on the table surface. And I'm just trying to cut down on sound reflection off of the hard surface of the table. Now, this may be kind of a minimal treatment. It's not really going to affect the bigger issue, which is the echoey room noise. But my next step, where I'm going to take cushions from the couch and the chair to build a sort of sound booth for myself, is really going to make the biggest difference of all. So let's move ahead to that. Okay, now I've got the microphone inside a little sound booth I made from the cushions of the couch and a spare cushion from the chair. There will be a picture available in the show notes for this episode. But I've also got a towel draped over the backside of this little portable sound booth that I created, simply to fill in some cracks, keep some room noise out. I am pretty confident you hear a very distinct difference here. There's a lot less echo and a lot less reverberation coming about in the room. And my voice should just feel cleaner and more, maybe even more present, a little more fullness to it. Now, I'm holding the microphone inside the sound booth that I've created, and I've got my head leaning into the sound booth as well. A couple of things I can say here is, number one, it looks kind of ridiculous with my computer inside here as well, but it also is a little bit hot. I've closed the windows, I've got this sound booth, I've got my head sticking inside of it. It's pretty interesting, but it's also something that really seems to work. So I would love to hear your feedback on this. I'm just wanting to demonstrate that in a pinch, you can create a pretty good sound, and it starts with your room sound quality. Hello? So isn't that an amazing difference you can make in your sound quality? From the beginning clips recorded in the room with no treatment at all, to these final clips where it's recorded with cushions from the couch, but hey, it's a much better sound. It's going to be better on the ears, and it's going to be more enjoyable, and in fact, might even sound just as professional as some professionally treated rooms. I would love to hear your feedback. You can make comments on this anywhere you see it on social media, or you can send me an email at Carey, Carey, at podcastfasttrack.com. And if you make comments on social media, use the hashtag podcastification so I can be sure to respond. That's all we've got for today. You know what time it is. It's time for you to go out and make it a podcastificating day. This show is brought to you by Podcast Fast Track, where my team provides professional podcasting services without the time suck. Full production, editing, and show notes, all in one monthly subscription package. You can find out more at podcastfasttrack.com. Now go out and make it a podcastificating day. Audio editing and show notes by podcastfasttrack.com. Get 15% off your first month by mentioning this show.